Welcome to another video from explainingcomputers.com. Today, an increasing number of people are migrating from Windows to Linux, and they often find it a refreshing change. It's a wonderful thing to do. This said, there are often also compatibility issues with documents and spreadsheets and presentations. And so in this video, I'm going to present some tips and some applications that might be of use to you if you're a long-term Microsoft Office user and you're migrating from Windows to Linux. So, here we are in Linux Mint, my favourite mainstream Linux distribution. I really do like the menus and the look and feel in this version of Linux. And I'm sure what many people would like to do here is to install Microsoft Office, to install Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and to launch them just like this. But sadly, this can't happen. This is one of those installs that only works in the wonderful world of filmmaking, because although there is a version of Microsoft Office for macOS and there are apps for Android and iOS, there isn't a version of Microsoft Office for Linux. Now, it is potentially possible to run the Windows version of Office in Linux by various means, and I'll look at that later in this video, but by default, when you first install Linux Mint, if you take a USB drive, I've got one here, and you plug it in, and the drive will come up like that, and as you can see there's a Word document on the drive, and if I click on it, by default it'll open in LibreOffice Writer, which is the default word processor in most mainstream Linux distributions. And sadly what we see here doesn't look exactly the same as it would look in Microsoft Word. And if I bring up the document in Word for you, you can see they are very slightly different. So what can we do about this? Now, the first reason that this document in LibreOffice Writer doesn't look exactly the same as the one in Microsoft Office is because Linux has a different set of fonts installed than Windows. So for example, the font here is in Arial. If we go up to the top there, you'll see the font has been substituted because it's not available. And similarly, this is Verdana and this is Comic Sans, and these aren't installed by default in Linux. But we can fix that, because if we close this down, I can go to close that down as well. For now, we'll go to a terminal, and I'm going to type sudo apt install mstt core fonts and enter. And it'll ask for my password, which of course I have to put in. Do we want to continue? Yes. And then we'll get to this, which is the license agreement. And if we use the tab key here, I can tab down to OK like that and press enter. In order to install this package, we must accept the license terms, so we'll go across with the arrow there and enter. And there we are, it's finished. And if I just close this down, we'll just open up our drive again, go back in that way into a LibreOffice Writer, and now you can see this basic document looks the same in Windows and Linux because it can use the same fonts. However, we've not installed here every font you might have on your Windows machine. We've just installed some of the basic Microsoft ones. So if we go across to a Windows desktop, this is one of my Windows 10 desktops, and I've navigated to C, Windows and Fonts. And I know that in this directory I've got various fonts I've purchased in which I use in my documents quite a lot. So for example, I use this font here, Square 721BT, a bold version. So what I could do here is to go to that and do a copy. And I've installed a USB drive, I plugged a USB drive into this PC, and I could do a paste to chuck it onto that drive like that. And then I could eject this drive in the normal manner. You know how to eject a drive, don't you? And we could go back into Linux, and here we are. And I can just open up our drive here. We can see that file, the font file. We can click on it there, shows us the font to a preview. And as you can see, we can click on install, and this will now install this onto our Linux system. And there we are, it is installed. So I've shown you how straightforward it is to take fonts across from a Windows system to a Linux system, although I would of course make a note you should only do this with fonts you've got a license for. Now, having sorted out our fonts, you might think we'd have no more compatibility issues, but sadly that's not the case. LibreOffice Writer, as I'm running here, and its companion programs such as LibreOffice Impress, which is the PowerPoint clone, are great bits of software. And if you want to use them to create your own documents and spreadsheets and presentations and not share the files with anybody else, you'll have no problems with these programs at all. However, they don't bring in Microsoft files, Word files and PowerPoint files and Excel files exactly as you'd see them in Microsoft Office. And to demonstrate that to you, let's go back to Windows and take a look at a document in Microsoft Word. And the document I've loaded in here is the manuscript for a book I wrote years and years ago called 7 Ways to Fix the World. But it's quite a long document. If I keep scrolling, you'll see there's lots and lots of document here. And if I press a Control G to go to a particular page, page 39 is a good one, it's remembered it for me, let's press Enter, you will see, get rid of that, at the top of page 39, this is the text. The top of page 39 reads, having read this chapter. So remember those words and we'll go back to Linux. And I'll close down this document in LibreOffice Writer or chuck it down there, and we'll go to the same document we're just looking at in LibreOffice Writer. And again, I'll go to a Control G to go to page 39, and the top of page 39 here starts with different words, the internet, end of sentence, while for the majority, etc. And in fact, I think if we go up to here, you'll see having read this chapter appears at the bottom of page 38. The page layout hasn't come through exactly the same into LibreOffice Writer. And clearly, if you're sharing documents between people and editing them, you can't have text moving around being in different places in the same document. So what can we do about this? Well, there are various options and they all involve getting other software. So if we go to the web here, there's a couple of options we could try. One is you could use OpenOffice as your word processor and spreadsheet and presentations package in Linux rather than LibreOffice. And OpenOffice I tend to find is slightly more compatible. It tends to keep things in the right places better than LibreOffice. Having said that, it's difficult to run OpenOffice on the same machine as LibreOffice successfully, so I've not tried it here. And also, OpenOffice can't save the latest Microsoft Office files, things like docx and the pptx files. So my recommendation, if you want a program that will match exactly Microsoft Office, or as close as possible, I would try this program here, WPS Office. As you can see, this is a site for WPS Office for Linux. And yes, there are versions for Windows, etc. So I've got that running down here. This is the WPS Writer word processor. Same document again, and I'll go Control G, go to page 39. You know the score by now. And oh look, it gets it right. The top of page 39, you can see it's the top of the page there, has the right words on it. Having read this chapter, you could be forgiven, etc. And if we look back to what we saw in Windows, there we are, it's exactly the same. So my recommendation for you, if you want to have a word processor and indeed a presentations package that matches Microsoft Office most accurately, don't use LibreOffice, use WPS Office in Linux. So let's now move on from looking at Linux alternatives to Microsoft Office, as we've just been doing, to running actual Microsoft code. And the easiest way to do this if you want to create and edit Microsoft Office compatible documents is to run these, the Microsoft Office web apps, which are basically cut down online versions of the main Office applications, as you can see. And you can access these for free, providing you've registered a Microsoft account, although here I'm going to show you them using my paid Office 365 account. And we've basically got an online version of Excel. There it is. I've been ignoring spreadsheets in this video so far, but there we are. We've got Excel there. And there's also here an online version of Word. And it's pretty good. I've been doing most of my writing online in Google Docs, the online Google word processor, for many, many years, and I looked at Microsoft Office web apps a few years ago, didn't think much of them. But today, I have to admit, they're very, very good indeed. I increasingly find myself using these. You see, we've got lots of functionality available here in Word Online. And if you want to, you can even go to the full ribbon. I don't know quite why you want to go to the full ribbon, but if you wanted to, you've got all that functionality there. I'd particularly point out here, though, that the PowerPoint online app is very, very good indeed. I really like this. Again, you've got masses of functionality, and it really is, just a functional online version of PowerPoint. Now, admittedly, you haven't got the slide sorter view. You have to look at your slides down here for your full presentation. You can go into a notes view, I think, over here, over there somewhere. I don't often use notes, but you can write notes in if you want to. And you can put in all your standard stuff. If you want to do, say, transitions and animations and things, everything is here. We can go to all the different effects are working just as you'd find them in PowerPoint itself. So I find if I need to edit a PowerPoint file when I'm in Linux, this is the way I do it. I don't bother with one of the Linux applications. I simply use the Office web app. And you can show your presentations perfectly well. Everything comes up, there we are, go full screen, and the thing works. So this is really, I think, very good indeed. I'm very impressed with the Microsoft Office web apps. They are my recommendation if you want to edit accurately Microsoft Office documents in Linux. Now, if everything I've shown you so far is insufficient, your only option will be to install Microsoft Office, the Windows software, in Linux. And there's two potential ways you might do this. One is to use software called Wine. If I go to the software manager here in Linux Mint, and I can type in the top there, Wine, up like that, and enter, it'll show us various options here. We've got different versions of Wine itself are shown down here. There are lots and lots and lots of them. And there's also some utilities that make Wine easier to use, Wine Tricks, Play on Linux. There's also a paid version of Wine called Crossover, all intended to help you run Windows programs on Linux using Wine. And indeed, I've got a whole video called Running Windows Programs on Linux, which shows you all the various options available. But just to prove to you it can work, down here I've got a folder containing the Windows program Note tab. And I've got Wine installed on this computer, so I can actually right-click on there and open with Wine Windows Program Loader, and hopefully in a second, yes, we've got a Note tab running here, a Windows program running on Linux. And you can get working some very useful software this way. So over here, for example, I've installed Adobe Audition, an early version of Adobe Audition. Adobe is an audio editor, but again, this is running on a Linux system. We've got a Windows program running on Linux that's come out via the normal Windows way. Now, this is all very well, and potentially you could run Microsoft Office using Wine on a Linux system. But to be honest, I wouldn't go there. I have had a lot of messing around over the years trying to get Microsoft Office running well using Wine, and I've never really got it to run well at all. And I think lots of people have had a similar experience. So my advice is, if you want to run Microsoft Office itself on Linux, don't bother going the Wine route, because you probably want Office to run very well indeed. If you don't, you'll be using some of the other solutions I've shown you earlier. So I think the best solution if you need the actual program is to install a virtual machine. And here I've installed something called VirtualBox, which is running down here. And this allows you to run a guest operating system inside the host, the main operating system on your computer. And once again, I've got a video called How to Set Up a Virtual Machine that takes you through this. But just to show you what I've got going on here, down here I've got a copy of Windows 7 running. This is a test copy of Windows 7, and here I've installed, I think it's Office XP, early version of Office. It's one I had easily available, and I can go into some of the sample documents we were running earlier. And if I press the right keys, I can even full screen this. So we're really running a copy of a Windows 7 inside Linux, and it works absolutely fine. Let's run up Excel and PowerPoint and everything, and it's running there on the screen. Let's have Word on top too. So we've got all the different versions of Office XP, my favourite version of Office, running here in Linux. So there we are. That's given you all the different options. We've gone all the way through from just sorting out your fonts, to running LibreOffice, to running WPS Office, to using Microsoft Office web apps, and potentially running the full Windows version of Office in Linux. I often say that in computing, every time you change something or upgrade something, you have to lose to win. And I think this is very much the case if you transition from Windows to Linux. Undoubtedly, you win in all kinds of ways. You get an operating system I personally find nicer to use, and you're not tied into Microsoft anymore, all that kind of stuff. But you do lose access to all of the wealth of Windows software and the ways of working that you've had for a great many years. And I hope that in this video I've given you some useful information that might help you if you're making that a Windows to Linux transition and you regularly work with Office software. But now that's it for another video. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.